Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish Podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is what's hot in Dynamics. You're now joining Merlin Schweiger, Liz McGlennon, and Ashley Steiner.
Today, we are doing our second episode. It's part of our D&I series, and we have DJ Baker on. DJ, Merlin, Ashley, and I are all collaborating on a nonprofit together, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. But DJ is the president of Firm Facility Services. So welcome, DJ. We're glad to have you on today. Would you want to share a little bit about who you are and your background and all of that?
Of course. Thanks for having me. Like I said, this is the topics we're going to be discussing today is something I'm very passionate about. So anytime I get the opportunity to, give my perspective on it, it's always a good day for me. But a little bit about my background. I grew up in Chicago, went to school in Iowa State. I'm a business owner. I run a nationwide facility management and retail construction company. So when I'm not, hanging out with the family and my daughter, I'm just, traveling, and trying to do my part to make the world a better place. That's kind of cheesy to say.
Not cheesy at all. I think it's admirable, honestly.
What did your journey look like getting to starting your own business and running Firm Facility Services?
People ask this question all the time, and I feel like, most entrepreneurs have this cool, success stories about, I wanted to be a business owner from day one, but that's kind of the opposite. I actually got into this business by mistake. I was actually a sales manager for another company that was similar to mine, and the company went under and laid me off. So I had a better idea of selling the services and expanding our scope nationwide and adding new lines of business. So I was like, hey, listen, this is something I can, do a little bit better on my own. And I had a couple of clients and they just believed in my vision and my mission, and they followed me and we took off.
That's awesome. I think it's interesting when something bad happens, like losing a job or getting laid off, and how that can kind of cause someone to pivot and try something that maybe you wouldn't have tried if you were, not in that situation. So I don't know. I think it's cool that you've kind of landed there accidentally.
Yeah. And we have, obviously you have your ups and downs, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. So yeah, it's really cool. Good experience, good to work with, different people and, have a good team around you and things of that sort. So
yeah. First topic or question for today, I wanted to ask about the wealth gap problem. And so I think a lot of times we think about like how can we help fix this? Like maybe we want to talk about the problem first, but then is it just getting a better paying job, or what kind of are the factors and the solutions to the wealth gap issue in our communities?
I was thinking a lot about that question when you pre-sent the questions over last night. And my answer to this is, not a real popular one. I think a lot of my friends are going to give me a hard time about that. But, you go back and you look, my perspective of this is that if you give a person, for easy math, $100,000 a year, right? Say, hey, listen, you're hired. I'm going to give you $100,000 a year. I'm going to pay you every Friday, right? Friday comes and you give that guy the check. If the guy doesn't understand finance nor financial literacy, what does he do with it? I grew up in Chicago. I have family members that passed away that never had a bank account. Wealth is an ownership. And if you have to try your best to educate. I think, the reason that we have so much gap in wealth, if you're looking at the normal world and the African-American world, is just our lack of understanding on finances or education, so I don't think that if you give a person a six-figure salary, that's gonna shorten the gap or make them successful. I think that if you give them knowledge and education around, finances and, things of that sort, I think that they're going to be successful and they're going to be able to retain that wealth, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of two steps. Like first you have to have a way to make the money, but then secondly, what do you do with it once you have it, and how do you manage that long term?
Yeah. How do you, and most people take for granted that, going back to my family, my grandma was a sharecropper in Mississippi. She had a sixth grade education. She passed away 2 years ago. She passed away with no bank account. It's like one of those things that where you have online banking. You don't even have to go into a branch to open up an account. But for a person not to have one and, even understand how it works, or saving or online bill paying, things like that, like that's kind of the issue, right? The issue is just, the lack of resources and the lack of education around those things because, even in school and college, I feel like, professors and people who's writing the curricular, take advantage that doesn't know the same things. You know what I mean? Like even how to properly use a credit card or properly reconcile your bank account every month, So, the power, is in education. So
I know I
yeah.
definitely wasn't taught that stuff in school. Like my parents taught that to me. So if you don't have parents or grandparents or, someone around to teach you that, then yeah, like how would you figure that out?
Yeah, exactly. You don't, then time keeps, giving more space, then the world keeps changing, technology keeps changing, and, now you find yourself in a huge gap trying to, always play catch up and things of that sort. So, I think that's something that we should focus more on.
When I always think back, like you see people say like, oh, instead of having like algebra 2 or things like that in high school, really you should be teaching kids how to like balance a checkbook or, like exactly things that you just said. And I actually was taught that in school, but I was taking calculus, Liz, and it was after we took the AP exam and we had 6 weeks left of school. And it was my dad, ironically, who was my teacher. And he's like, cool, what are we going to do for 6 weeks? Let me teach you what you have to make in order to live the life that you want to live. But I mean, it wasn't a class. It was just, how do we fill 6 weeks of school after class is over? And, so, but I truly, I think that that's an awesome point is how do we educate people on finances and wealth?
Yeah, that is an interesting point. I guess one of the things so I'd kind of added something onto this question that I was thinking about just based on some things that I've read is around like not only sort of from the individual perspective of do I have a job that pays me enough? And to your point, do I know how to save that money or put that money to work for me? But also the idea of kind of generational wealth. And like one of the things that I think, that I personally have always taken for granted is my job. I only have to support me or my family now that I have a family, but I don't expect that I have to take care of my parents or my grandparents. Like they've got their own thing. They've got their own money.
Siblings, cousins, friends.
Right. Like everybody's sort of like, oh, well, they'll take care of themselves because that's just kind of understood as they'll take care of themselves. And one of the things that like I hadn't realized until I read something about it was the idea of that sort of generational wealth. If you're from a family that doesn't have any generational wealth and you're the first person to get a good paying job, then like now you're the one that's responsible to take care of everybody else that's still alive in your family. And that's a lot of extra load. Like, sure, I'm paying for 2 kids, but I'm not paying for like 10 extra adults on top of that. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. That's very common in our culture that, the first person to make it out, it's your responsibility to go back and you want to help, right? And because
sure,
you've been at the bottom, now it's, so many resources are kind of put behind you for you to go out there and sacrifices were made, like even for myself, like my mom had me when she was 16, and it's like, wow, that's she sacrificed, going to college the traditional way and, even her senior year in high school and things of that sort. So, part of that is expectation from the family, but also part of it is an obligation, right? That I feel obligated to, so many sacrifices were made to raise me and, give me, opportunities that, even my cousins didn't have and we grew up in the same family. So yeah, it definitely, it definitely adds to that, that challenge of, building generational wealth where, you're stretched so thin, and the margins are really so small. So yeah, that's a great point.
I don't know if there's anything to do about that really, other than get more people better jobs so that like over generations they'll catch up. But because it's a generational problem, we can't fix that without like 50 or 100 years going by.
Yeah,
Well, I was
time.
gonna say, like, the problem is like the solution is not being the first anymore, is to be the
Yeah.
second or third or multiple people in your family accomplishing that at the same time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I feel like the world is so quick and so, urgent to have this conversation, which is important, make up for lost times. But it's like, only thing we can do is continue to have conversations like that and create opportunities like the not-for-profit that you guys put together that I'm a part of, but also just give it time. We didn't get like this in 5, 10 years. It's not going to take 5, 10 years or 2 generations to get us out of this.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, that it's not gonna be fixed in our lifetime or overnight or in a super short period of time, is that it's something that maybe our kids or grandkids will hopefully like see real change, and that it will take more time than I think we wish it would.
Absolutely.
That's the hardest part, is being patient and waiting, because you take these efforts and you're really passionate about it. But I think that's the hardest part, is waiting for those changes to take place.
Well, and not losing momentum just because you're not seeing the change
Exactly.
real time. Yeah. DJ, you had mentioned like educational resources around like financial management. And that made me think of kind of the classic, I know it's kind of a cliche example, but like professional athletes, and they make so much money. And some of them, I know you hear stories like aren't set up for the rest of their lives. And they do just spend it on, random things, where you did invest that or spend that the right way. Like they should be able to take care of themselves and their families for a long time. So do you have any like recommendations on like, if you're not in a traditional, like if you're not a kid going through the education system and we're not teaching that there, like what are other ways that people can gain those skills, or how can we support efforts like that?
Research, it doesn't have to be this real like complex answer or a complex solution. I spend a lot of my time Googling things, you know what I mean? How to manage my money management 101. But now I'm at a place where, I meet with my financial advisor and things of that sort. But questions, just ask questions. So how does life insurance work? How does, a 401k, how do I contribute to that? Things like that. Let's always be eager. And no question is a dumb question when it comes to finance. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that just go out and seek the answer. And NFL players, just enough smart people around them and enough resources around that those guys shouldn't be, going broke. But it's a lack of understanding thing, because those guys think that they're going to play forever. And I haven't always been financially responsible too. Young in college and, different things like that. It's like, hey, I got money that I thought was a lot. Let's spend it. I can go out and make more, and I can go out and make more, but as you get older, it's like, wow, it's like, man, I spent $500 at the bar. It's like, wow, that, do you know how long it's going to take to make that back? Or, what I can do, I can help somebody else out. And that's groceries for someone and things like that. So, yeah, just keep, wanting to better yourself, keep asking questions, and, just try to surround yourself around, people that's a lot smarter than you are. And I think it works out.
Yeah, that's great. So our next question is around minority-owned businesses. And so we're curious to hear your thoughts on, since you do own your own business, like why are there so few minority-owned businesses? And then again, what can we do about that?
This goes back to the first question about the wealth gap. And my answer was a lack of education around it. So let's go back, and we're going to take pre-COVID, right? So minority business was up. Like we never saw so many like minority businesses open. Like it was going in a good direction. So then we had COVID, and a lot of those businesses start dying, right? But then we had the government pumping out, EIDL, PPP, and that's technically their money. Anybody that pays taxes and is a legitimate business, is structured the right way, is entitled to that money. But the problem is minorities, didn't have the proper relationship or the proper understanding to navigate through those, those government loans that was going to keep them open. They didn't have the banking relationship to go get the PPP. They didn't have a good accounting relationship so they could get their tax returns and things like that. So any good business, after a year, not 6 months to a year, not being open, not generating revenue, you're gonna, it's gonna come to an end. Like unless you're like Amazon or Apple or something like that. So I think that it is such a disconnect on like even loans, like how do you start a business if no one's going to give you a loan, So I think making resources more attainable, that I think that will be great, making underwriting a little bit more understanding to, minorities and grants and things like that. And I think that's the seed that we should plant if we want to see more minority businesses open and, see longevity behind them.
Those are good points. There are a lot of government systems that we've built that are very difficult to navigate. Even when you have the connections and you know the right people, it's still a real pain in the butt to be like, oh, well, like if I need to get this kind of loan, like, well, you got to file this form and you got to go here and you got to provide this information. It's like, well, if you don't know what that stuff is and you don't know anybody who knows what that stuff is, and you're gonna be like, I don't even know. Or maybe you don't even pay attention to the news. You don't know it's an option.
Exactly. You'd be amazed of like how many people are like, wow, we didn't know that, and the money was meant for business owners to keep people in business, you'd be surprised at how many other minority business owners I know, like, oh man, I didn't even know that even existed. And it's 2 years later, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's the, discouraging part about the webcam. You make traction, then, you get hit with a hard time like this, and you see so many businesses that were doing well, that were doing the right thing that was needed, seeing those guys crumble, like it's kind of upsetting a little.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that the pandemic was hard on just small businesses in general. And I agree with Merlin. I think all that stuff's confusing and difficult. Even if you do know it exists and you have someone helping you navigate it. Like I know my accountant's like, oh yeah, here's all this business information because I have my own LLC and none of it applies to me. But like I'm still really grateful that he's sending out this newsletter kind of to all of his small business clients and at least informing us of like these are the loans or the offers from the government because of COVID. So I can only imagine, yeah, if you don't have any resources kind of pushing the information at you proactively, that you might not even know that it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. What can we do about that? More information, more newsletters?
I think you have to reach the people where they're at. Like, I think that it just comes to the point, like if we want to make a change, we got to kind of like get uncomfortable a little bit. And sometimes you got to just, it's like marketing kind of, you have your ideal of who you want your client to be. How do you get to that client? You know what I mean? And it's not that simple as a business analogy, but I think that if we kind of take that approach on it, like, hey, listen, like this is the problem, like this is our target audience. We're trying to get this information to them. We're trying to reach them. How do we do that? And I think that those are kind of like some of the steps that I think that we should start, taking.
And I think there was such a demand for those programs too, that they were running out of funds. So like, why would a bank market that and their demand was higher than I think we were able to meet. And so like, of course, they're not marketing that out to like communities that wouldn't know about it. Like, why would they?
And the unfortunate part about this is I think it was like the EIDL is like the disaster loan. It closed December 31st, 2001. And we still had like $10 billion that we didn't spend. It's just there. It's just the Treasury has it. The SBA, has it. And it's like, I know like 10 businesses that went out of business.
Yeah. It's not helping anyone just sitting there.
Sitting there, so it's like, wow. And it's not, they didn't need a lot. It was a t-shirt making company. Probably needed 10,000. That's not a lot on a grand scheme, but it's like, yeah, we're not doing something right here.
It's too hard to get to that. Yeah, to get that money to where it needs to be.
It's too hard. It's too many loopholes. Like we have to remove some red tape on this. Like we shouldn't have, American businesses going out of business and we still have a surplus of $10 billion in the SBA bank account right now. That's taxpayer dollars or whatever the money came from.
And that's definitely a problem.
Like taking it all in, right? Like listening. And I don't own my own business. I don't actually really know anybody who does other than a local bar downtown where I live. But so these open up just good questions. Like, how do you find out that this stuff is available? And how do you make it easier for people to attain it once they know it's there? I don't think those are simple questions to answer, but I mean, that's kind of the problem we're facing. So I know I didn't really add any value there, but it's something I'm just, rolling in my mind. I don't own my own business, so I didn't even know about a lot of this. You guys are educating me. I didn't know that this stuff existed because it didn't impact me. So
yeah, and you're probably not the only one, right? If you don't own your own business, yeah, I could see how, like, why would you be looking into it? So it was a good summary. Okay, so let's move on to like programs, initiatives, nonprofits. So I don't think we're gonna fix the slowness or the difficulty of working with the federal government to get funding, or loans or all of that. But like, what can we do in our local communities? Like, what are initiatives, nonprofits that exist today that help solve some of these problems? And DJ, I know you mentioned that you work for a not-for-profit, or you're collaborating with a not-for-profit called Boulder Options. So would you mind telling us about that? And then if there's anything else you want to share, that'd be great too.
Yeah, Voter Options is a program that provides structured time for after school, inner city kids. So a place they can come and, get some homework done, have a snack. It's a mentorship type of program. The president is Daryl Thompson. He's a great guy. I think it's a really great program. As we became a community partner with those guys a couple of years ago, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And as we grow as a company, we make sure that, we provided as many resources as we can throughout the year, just to make sure they, their families, that they're supporting, get everything that they need. So that's like coat drives, or, we donate a lot of gift cards and gas cards and stuff around Christmas time. So yeah, I definitely think that that's something that, you see all the things that's going on in the news with the violence, and most of the people are doing that are kids. So we provide more, structured time where they can be mentored by people that look like them, or people that can, give them a different perspective than the one they already had. I think that's always, a good way to be proactive and reactive.
that local to the Minneapolis area?
Yes, local to Minneapolis. Yep.
So as somebody who's not in the Minneapolis area, do you have advice on how to find things like that? I mean, people listening are all over the country.
In the
Like,
world.
in the world, like how would we find places like that to help out or get involved with?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I was just blessed to run into these guys really, by chance. I was actually calling on them to be a client and started talking. I was like, wow, this is a great program. I think it's something that we definitely want to be a part of, So I think everyone has a Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA and things like that. I think just researching and reaching out to like some of your local chambers and school programs at your local high school and, inner city schools. I think that tons of opportunities to give back and help out there.
DJ, are there any other initiatives or nonprofits you want to talk about today?
I think ours is pretty great.
Should we talk about ours?
That we can, when I first heard that idea, Tayo told me about it. I was like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, man, I'm like, wow, that's, you think about that type of stuff, but he was like, just to be able to be created already and be right there in front of you. I was like, wow, this is crazy. I couldn't believe. So I really thank you for, sacrificing your time and putting something like this together. I know it's not easy, and, creating those partnerships and things like that. We talk about how do we do our part in decreasing that wealth gap. Like, I think that you're ahead of your time in regards to this non-for-profit that you put together for us.
That means, Liz, you need to talk about it.
I was going to say, we've never talked about it officially on the podcast before. So the nonprofit we're talking about is called TechFluent, and all 4 of us are involved in helping with it. It officially started this year, and we are providing mentorship and training on D365 Power Platform and soft skills to people from under-resourced communities, with the goal of reducing or help reduce the wealth gap in those communities. And our first cohort launches on March 21st. So if you want to help in any way, volunteer time, donate money, we need equipment, we need employment opportunities for our graduates, contact any one of us. And Merlin, Ashley, I know you're involved too. So anything you want to add about TechFluent?
Well, I'll just say, so, I mean, everything that you guys have said is awesome. And as somebody who's talked to a lot of the trainers or people that are going to get involved from mentoring or training, when I was talking to one, and I'll throw Seth's name out here, I said, when we were talking about the time, he said, if I can't give 3 hours to train, like, I'm not focusing on the right thing. Like, I clearly don't have my priorities right. And so that actually kind of struck me and hit me really hard when he said that. And it's really helped me get like focused and kind of direct the conversations that I'm having with people, because if we can't give 3 hours twice a year for something this important, then we're not prioritizing our time appropriately. So I thought that was really powerful and kind of has really driven me to get even more involved or want to do more.
That is a good point. Yeah. And I just want to say I'm really grateful. It's all volunteer led. It's, all volunteer time. And we have over 40 confirmed mentors and trainers helping us with the program, in addition to the leadership volunteer team and the board. And there's too many names to list them off all here, but I'm really appreciative of having the help from the community, because we couldn't do it if we didn't have those volunteer trainers and mentors.
I'll say from my perspective, as the person who's trying to find the essentially the jobs for the graduates, all the conversations that I keep having with the partners, I think, are also going pretty well, because on the one hand, you are assisting in something that is a value add to society as a whole, but also from a purely like economic, like selfish standpoint, every partner out there is looking for more people to do this kind of work, because this is a growth industry and there just aren't enough people to do the work that needs to be done. And so we're sort of like adding a win-win here. We can provide access to this community or to this industry for people who wouldn't otherwise have access to it. And the industry itself is getting more people with more diverse backgrounds and perspectives and viewpoints to be able to build better, cooler stuff for businesses. So it's everybody wins.
Yeah. So DJ, last kind of serious question for you before we get to our fun one. How can people like us be better allies for minority communities? Any tips or recommendations there?
Liz, that's a great question. I think that, the best thing I, recommend to people of a different race, I would say, is that, keep having tough conversations. Not everyone is racist. It's a lot of people who just miseducated by something. Like they have a lack of knowledge or understanding. And sometimes their lack of knowledge or understanding of something comes off bad, right? So anytime, you're in a space where you can educate someone or give them, an insight of the culture that you have and the understanding that you have, that I think that would be very helpful. Anytime a bad comment is made, or anytime something that doesn't really is not politically correct is said, just stick up for it. Just, do the right thing. So it's kind of simple. I think that everyone can take that advice,
It sounds so easy. Why do you think it's so hard for everyone then? Because that's such simple advice. But yeah, if that was really all it took to solve this problem, why haven't we gotten there yet?
For an example, I have a friend who went to Thanksgiving dinner, right? And her uncle, he's an older guy, he made a comment. And he's an elder in the family. No one wanted to be the first one to say, "Hey, Uncle Pat, you probably shouldn't say that." You know what I mean? Like, no one wants to ruin Thanksgiving dinner, but it's like those type of conversation, he probably want to appreciate that right then and there, but it's like, that's gonna stick with him. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's easy, but like, who wants to be the first one to put their neck out for, sometimes it's unpopular. You want to be the first person to stick your neck out for something like that. You know what I mean? So
I always think of it as like, you can't be afraid to offend somebody in that situation. Uncle Pat's probably going to be offended that you called him out, but you can't be afraid that that'll happen, that you're going to offend someone, because over time, they'll realize what they said. And especially in, conversations that happen after that, you can't be, and that's so hard, Liz, right? Like, to your point, like, it sounds so easy, but I think it is difficult to like know that you're going to make somebody upset, but it's for the right purpose.
Yeah.
Yep. It is hard.
It is.
No, it's very uncomfortable, like
Yeah.
I even have to, I even find myself, talking about that, like with some aunts and stuff, like, hey, aunt, you probably shouldn't say that. You know what I mean? Or that's not the way you should look at that, or that joke's really not that funny, and it's like, I'm sure there's no malice behind it. Sometimes it is, but it's like, hey, that's not okay. And it's our responsibility as a community, as a whole, to make sure that, we're respecting people. And it's that simple. If everyone does do their part, we're gonna make a lot of progress. And just keep having tough conversations and keep being open to, dialogues like this. Even for you guys, I'm sure this is really uncomfortable, like to start a podcast and talk about the wealth gap. right? Like, it's not the easiest thing to talk about, and yeah, it's, just keep doing what you guys are doing. I think that you guys are definitely making it a little bit easier to keep kicking the can down the road. So I want to give you guys credit for, for doing this, and, just like I said, it's not the easiest thing to do, and we need more allies like you guys to, help us move this work forward.
Well, I'll do what I can, even when it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Most of the time.
I think it's a good takeaway from this. Yeah. Okay, Marilyn, Ashley, any final questions for DJ before we move on to our last one?
No, I'm excited for the fun one.
Okay.
Oh, I think this is the most important one. No, it's not.
Because I've been asking all the questions. Does someone else want to ask this one?
Yeah, I'll ask. So our signature question that we like to ask all of our guests is, what is your favorite hot dish? And, being from Minnesota in the Midwest, if you don't know what hot dishes, let us know. Yeah, Chicago's the Midwest. So
yeah.
If I'm being honest, I never had a hot dish before.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a culture thing. Like, black people don't eat hot dish, I don't think.
Well,
no, honestly, I have never had it.
What if we brought in, because we brought in the definition of a hot dish for
hot dish?
Yeah.
Like I know it's like tater tot
in the oven.
Right?
Yeah, that's like one. So it's something that you put in the oven, right? Like a casserole.
A lot of people pick lasagna.
Yeah.
Okay, I have lasagna. I have had lasagna.
Yeah. So anything that's like baked in the oven.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have had lasagna. Yeah.
Yeah, I think something you like pre-cook part of, and then you like put it in the oven to finish it. Right, because like lasagna, you have to make the noodles and the meat and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, lasagna. What about you guys? What's your favorite?
Mine is probably macaroni and cheese. I have this awesome recipe where you put like panko breading on the top, and it's amazing.
Okay.
I would probably be a lasagna person my own self.
Okay. So anything that's pre-cooked, that's put in the oven to finish to bake is a hot dish.
That's how I've always classified it. It's like a casserole. Like you make part of it and then put it in the oven.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what you guys would.
I have had lasagna and baked mac and cheese. And okay.
Let's just broaden it. What's your favorite food then?
My favorite food, probably crab legs. I really like seafood.
What kind of crab legs?
Snow crab.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great. I love crab legs too. Like an all you can eat crab legs place is like my favorite kind of dinner.
They're so messy, so I just try to eat them at home.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you get like dribbling butter down yourself. Yeah, like things are like flying and
I can eat that all day, every day. For breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of that.
Yeah. You know what we need to do sometime, DJ, since we're both in Minneapolis, we got to find an all you can eat crab leg spot, and I challenge you to a crab eating leg contest, because that's the only food I can like eat that much of.
Really?
Man.
Yeah. I can out-eat my dad and Tom. Like I've out-eaten every single person I've ever challenged.
Because you never get full, right? Like it's never.
No, because it's so much work.
Yeah, it's so much work. So you're burning.
I'll be there to record it on video.
Yeah, I'm not a witness. I'm not a
seafood
next
person. Podcast could be like an all-you-can-eat seafood spot.
Yeah.
Another live one. That would be awesome.
Yeah. We'll have to plan it. TechFluent team outing.
Sounds awesome. That would be worth the trip over to Minneapolis. I know we talk about it.
Yeah, you gotta come visit, Ashley.
I know, someday.
You never been, or you just don't make it here often?
I just don't make it. Well, since COVID, I don't make it through. I've been there. I've only lived in Wisconsin for almost 5 years now. And so I've been there quite a bit before COVID, but not since. COVID's kind of changed the whole world.
Yeah, it did.
It did a bit.
Hopefully it's over soon. We cross our fingers.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Right. Yeah. Thanks, DJ, for joining us today. I thought it was a really good conversation.
Thank you. I hope I gave you guys, some good content to use. I hope it was helpful. You guys learned some stuff.
Yeah,
I know,
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to speaking with you guys again.
Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at dynamicshotdish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.